Hi, my name is Sky Parker, and I'm going to be doing my presentation on the effects of childhood poverty on the mental and physical health of people. So, while I was doing my research, I found a lot of sources talking about the not only the psychological effects, but also the physical effects and the mental health effects of childhood poverty throughout the lifespan of a person. And so um, I found a couple of articles on the topic, and there was a longitudinal study that examined the effects of poverty in children ages 5 months to 4 years old with the perceptions of a child's mother. So they performed multiple tests and assessments and investigated the associations between exposure to poverty and um, asthma attacks that the mothers reported. Um, the researchers that were conducting the experiment defined poverty in three domains. So one was concurrent poverty, which was whether or not the child was in poverty during the study. Um, one period lagged poverty, which is um, if the child was experienced poverty prior to the study, and then chronic poverty, which is if poverty was continued after the study was done. And so the results indicated that exposure to poverty negatively affects two major health indicators in childhood. One being maternal perception of health, and the other is mother reported attacks. And so the researchers concluded that children who are in concurrent poverty experience more asthma attacks than those of one period lagging chronic poverty. And the study also discusses the need for further research so they can come to more accurate conclusions. Um, Also, during my research, I found multiple articles related to how childhood poverty can affect the overall health of a person, and how it could affect the brain, and how it could cause stress dysregulation in the brain. Um, and I found an article that was that examined the effects of stress in childhood poverty and brain development in adolescents. 207 young adolescents performed multiple assessments to measure the effects of stress on the brain. So the results concluded that the more years living in poverty increased increased cortical levels and increased dysregulation in responses. So the way stress was measured was by blood pressure tests and overnight cortisol levels. So meaning the more stress you have, the higher cortisol levels you have in the brain. And then regarding the cardiovascular responses, stress regulation was measured by cardiovascular reactivity to a severe stressor and recovery after the stressor was introduced. So that was how the stress affects the brain. And then another article that I found also goes on to explain how stress affects the individual parts of the brain. So, how the stress of being in poverty in childhood can affect the amygdala structure of the brain in adulthood, and the medial prefrontal cortex of the brain. And so to assess the associations between childhood poverty and neural processing of social signals, meaning emotional faces. So the participants were asked to identify emotional cues in people's pictures and match them with other cues to other pictures. So if a person's face was happy, they had to identify another happy face so they could identify the emotions. So the results of this study indicated that childhood poverty was associated with higher response from both the amygdala and the medial prefrontal cortex of the brain. And so the results also demonstrated that childhood poverty was closely associated with decreased stimulation of the left side of the amygdala, which is responsible for emotions. And so, moreover on that, so if you experience childhood poverty, then you are less likely to associate emotional faces with each other. And the results of the study concluded that adults who grew up in poverty developed to be more sensitive to social threats and less sensitive to positive social cues. And they stated that more research needs to be done to come to better conclusions about this study. There was another article that I read that was about how childhood poverty affects transitions into adulthood. And so the results of the study indicated that adults who experience childhood poverty are more fiscally responsible with their money than those that are more affluent and more wealthy. And the study emphasized the way socioeconomic inequality can distinguish youth experience in both adolescence and young adulthood. There has been multiple studies that have been done to help children who live in poverty. There has been multiple studies that have been done to help these children become better. And one of the articles that I found analyzed the effects on students' IQ level, achievement level, and the effects on school successes on children living in poverty. And the study came to the conclusion that early childhood education achievement is found to produce consistent effects on later academic achievement and success, meaning that if you have a good base for your education, then if the base is uh, if the base is strong, then you're able to, I guess, flourish in adulthood. And yeah, because of those reasons, um, there's a lot of uh, there's a lot of things that go into childhood poverty, the long-term effects, both short-term and long-term effects of childhood poverty that could last for a lifetime. And conclusions to this is that one of the articles that I read, the author proposes that every child living in the U.S. should receive at least 1 year of quality education prior to attending public school so that they could develop the foundation and develop a good foundation to ultimately be successful in life. Thank you.